Hello and welcome to another episode of Killing the Boredom, a podcast where I just talk about anything that I've been checking out over the past week or couple of weeks and, talk about it, just for fun because I love talking about media and art. So the first thing that I want to talk about this week is part 2 of Fear Street. So I talked about the first part in the previous podcast. I wasn't blown away by it, but I thought it was decent. It was a fairly serviceable movie. I guess I should say I'm going to be doing spoilers for part 1 in this podcast. And I think from now on as well, I am also going to have a spoiler segment when I talk about something. But I will give warning when I'm going to do that. I will say that I am going to dive into spoilers now. But anyway, yeah, so part 1, I thought, as I said in the previous podcast, that I didn't dislike it. I thought it was decent. I gave it, I think, like a low 6, a high 5. And I think that, it brought me in, especially in the last 20 minutes or so. It really reeled me in and it made me a lot more interested to see where the story was going to go. So obviously after the, as I said, spoilers for part 1, after the possession of Sam, Dina is looking for C. Burnham, a previous survivor of the, witch killings that occurred in 1976. Dina searches for her help to help get Sam unpossessed and to try to beat this evil spirit, seeing as she was one of the previous survivors. So this film takes place in 1976. A lot of it is still based in not a lot of it, a small portion of it is still based in 1994, the period of the first movie, but then majority of the movie is a flashback to 1976, and we see how the killings at Camp Nightwing unfolded. And obviously, whereas the first movie was more an homage to the 90s horror films, particularly Scream, this film is an homage very clearly to Friday the 13th, just the setting and the characters. And like the first movie, I like the throwback to all the 70s music. The costume design is really good. I thought it was really cool. You wouldn't be mistaken in thinking that, apart from the quality of the actual filming, it does look like a movie from the 70s, just with the style of it. And it kind of plays on a few of those it's a bit campy, like some of the 70s horror movies. In a way, I can't quite explain it. But I don't know, just someone walking in on two people having sex to, I think it was Carry On My Wayward Son? I don't even know if that's a name, but yeah, that song. Yeah, I'm really showing how much knowledge I have about 70s music. But yeah, so it was just playing on a lot of those tropes. And sorry, I'll be one sec. Sorry, I just need to turn my heater off. I was fucking boiling. But yeah, I'm back. So yeah, so this film takes place in 1976. It's obviously an homage to 70s horror movies, and it follows, C. Burnham's story, because Dina goes to see her, and then, C. Burnham tells her story. So we are following the story of the Burnham sisters, Ziggy and Cindy Burnham, and we're seeing it from their perspective, how the night unfolded. And I would say that this movie is not as good as the first one, but it's only a very slight difference. I think what the first one had for it that the second one didn't was, the first movie I wasn't that engaged in the beginning, as I said last week, but in the last 20 minutes when they killed off two of the main characters, it reeled me in, because I was like, okay, this movie is going to start taking risks that really caught me off guard, and it really brought me in. I thought that was actually quite a smart move to keep these characters barely escaping death for most of the movie, and then at the very end, two of them just being killed pretty instantaneously and without warning. I thought it was a really interesting move. But because of that surprise in the first movie, this second movie didn't have that surprise factor. So when we saw people getting killed, It wasn't as interesting, I guess. There was some good gory kills, obviously, but I was kind of still expecting, like, okay, we know people are going to die now. We know this movie's not going to really play it safe and make all the main, characters survive to the end, especially because you get told at the beginning of the movie that C. Burnham's sister died. That said, I still thought this movie was fairly enjoyable. I thought that the girl who plays Ziggy, I don't know her name. She was really good. She's actually going to be a very good actress, I think. I think she has a big future. She was very engaging, very the best actor in the film, in my opinion, by far. And I think probably one of the younger cast members. She looked very young, so I think that she will, she'll be a name to look out for in the future. Even though I don't know her name. But she was really good. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to give a movie like this, like something that's supposed to be a horror movie, but it's not really scary. But I know it's also not trying to be super scary. I'd probably give it like a mid to high five. I think overall it's probably more consistent than the first movie. But as I said, the first movie really reeled me in the last 20 minutes. Whereas this movie didn't. I thought the last 20 it was kind of starting to drag. Yeah, so I'm going to say mid to high five. Now I'm going to go into... Actually, no, I won't go into spoilers yet because there's a few other things I want to talk about. So what I am liking about this series so far is I'm predicting that in the third movie, so in 1666, they're going to explore the relationship of a mother and daughter. Because what I have noticed so far about this series is that each film is exploring a different type of important relationship between two women. So in the first movie, obviously, it's between Sam and Dina, and it's exploring the relationship of lovers, but both female lovers. And it's not a perfect relationship by any stretch. It's very flawed, and it's cracking at the seams. And then in this movie, it's exploring a relationship between Cindy and Ziggy. This relationship of sisters who kind of have different opinions on the world because of their upbringing. And what's interesting about both movies is that in each relationship there's one person who's more oriented towards this is predestined, our futures are predestined because we're born in Shadyside, whereas the other one is a bit more optimistic and wanting to escape and go to Sunnyvale and escape this this curse, if you will. And I think that's definitely interesting to see that parallel in both movies, and I hope that they carry that on in the third movie. I think that might be these movies' weaknesses, is that I feel like as the movies progress, as we go through as we go from the first movie to the third movie, we're going to see the progression of these themes and the evolution and building of these themes, right? That of women and women relationships, that of the hopeful dreamer or the grounded realist. We're going to see these dynamics develop throughout the series. But the thing is, I feel like something like that works better in a television show where you have multiple episodes and you are letting something play out, this theme develop over many, many hours. Whereas if these movies came out, say, 1 or 2 years apart, as most, film series do, because, they're generally not filmed all together. You film one, you release it, then you film another one, you release it. There's usually a lot more space between different, movies and, say, seasons in a television show, or particularly episodes in a television show. And I feel like that allows television shows to really develop themes over numerous hours, tens of hours, even hundreds of hours, really dive deep into those themes. And I feel like this show could have done that better if it had, movie series could have done that better had it decided to develop Fear Street into a television show rather than a movie series, because it definitely is trying to, it definitely kind of comes in the middle, right? Whether it's a TV limited series or movies, like obviously they're movies, but the way that it's released episodically, weekly, is very, that's very characteristic of a TV show. In fact, it is probably the defining characteristic of a TV show. So I feel like maybe they should have gone, I feel like this would probably be better as a TV series, that instead of having, 3 movies ranging from an hour and a half to 2 hours, you'd put this as a limited series with each episode going for about 40 minutes, and it could be, say, an 8-hour series. And I think that probably would have made more sense in terms of what I think that they're trying to achieve in showing this thematic consistency and this thematic evolution. Because even though the movies are set in different time periods, it's all the same story that started in the first movie. They awaken the witch, and then Sam gets possessed, and then they're trying to get rid of Sam's possession. And while the second movie is set in a different time period, it's just a flashback still. The main story is happening in 1994, not 1976. So, yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard to say whether that would have made it better, but I personally think it would have. In saying that, I don't know if I would have. I might not have watched it if it was a TV series, I guess, because there's a lot of TV series I'm watching. I don't know. That's just me. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't talked to anyone about this, so I'm just thinking out loud here. They're not bad by any stretch, but I just think they're a bit middling. As I said, the first movie, for me to give it a good, to say that, it was decent, it kind of relied on that last 20 minutes. Had that last 20 minutes not happened, I probably would not have enjoyed it as much. Without the shock factor of that last 20 minutes, I think I prefer this movie more, 1976. I just found the characters a tiny bit more likable. Apart from the fucking stoner friend, the stoner friend, the short blonde haired chick. That girl was so fucking annoying. Oh my god, all the screaming and the fucking laughing. Good work by the actress to portray her as really annoying, because she was fucking doing my head in. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I'm gonna give this movie a mid to high 5. So I'll talk spoilers. So there was actually a good twist in this movie, and that was that C. Burnham is not Cindy Burnham, it's Ziggy Burnham, and I thought that was a really good twist. I actually enjoyed that. I was watching the movie, and when Cindy Burnham was having the axe put through her fucking chest like 10 times, I'm like, bro, you cannot bring her back to life from this. She's been fucking... Look, bro, she's fucking dead. Because they say at the end of the first movie that, at some point in the first movie, that the survivor of the killings got, she got resuscitated. But yeah, then it's revealed that, no, Ziggy's full name is Christine. She's actually C. Burnham, and she's the survivor. I thought that was a good twist, because the whole movie, it frames the whole movie as Cindy's the main character, and we're going to watch her survive. And then it flips it at the very end, which I thought was, an interesting twist. Wasn't enough to make the movie good, but, it was decent. This movie was close to decent. I think it was worth watching purely because I do want to see where this series goes. I want to see what happens in the last movie. Because even though there's nothing particularly incredible about these movies, they are still fairly engaging and fairly entertaining. And yeah, that's all I really have to say about it. I wouldn't recommend either of these movies on their own, but I think as a, this trilogy that's come out in the space of 2 weeks, it's an interesting concept, and I am looking forward to see how it concludes. I have seen some people say the third movie is the best part of it. So I'm really hoping that they, wrap it up well. I hope they don't fucking bring back the two people that died in the two side main characters that died in the first movie, because I think that'll be a massive fucking cop out. And would probably ruin my enjoyment of the first movie, considering I liked it due to it taking a risk. But yeah, look, I hope the third movie is good, and hopefully, because of the way this series is structured, I feel like if the third movie is really good, that will elevate the rest of the series. But likewise, if it's not that good, it will probably, bring it down a bit. I think that's also why what makes this series very television-like, is the fact that it's very hard to judge the movies on their own because of the overarching narrative. Because each movie is obviously leading into the next. There's kind of a cliffhanger at the end of every movie. And I'm not saying every movie that has a cliffhanger is necessarily television-like, but just the way it's done, it just felt very episodic. But yeah, I hope the third movie's good, and I'll talk about it next week probably. And I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back, and the second thing I'm going to talk about today is slowthai's first album, Nothing Great About Britain, which I said in my review for Tyrant, I didn't like this album that much, but I decided to go back to it, having enjoyed Tyrant so much, and really seeing how good how good of an artist I think slowthai is. I'm like, okay, I'll go back to Nothing Great About Britain, and review it, and well, not review it, just talk about it, see if my thoughts about it have changed. And I think they have. I was probably a bit unfair on this album when I first listened to it. I kind of just thought slowthai came across as just, I don't know, just a bit arrogant. And that was my fault. I wasn't reading into the album enough. I probably just listened to it very, I guess, haphazardly, without much consideration for the actual themes being expressed within the album. This is a good album. I don't think it's as good as Tyrant, but I think I was unfair on it the first time I listened to it. Having listened to it multiple times, I think, this is still a very solid album. And what I like going back to this, having listened to Tyrant and listening to Tyrant many times because I really enjoyed it, is I like how he has evolved a lot of the themes and techniques that he used in Nothing Great About Britain, and how he's evolved them into and transitioned that into Tyrant. Because you can still see, like, a lot of this album, much like how Tyrant is separated into these kind of trap bangers for the first half of the album, and then these more somber, melodic, introspective songs in the second half. Half of Nothing Great About Britain is very menacing, and it's using a lot of strings and these synths that are just very intimidating, and they're very, lots of it's very much very energetic, very braggadocious, and then a lot of these songs on these albums are also very introspective, a lot more haunting. Obviously this theme is much more developed in Tyrant. This theme of duality is much more developed in Tyrant because he actually splits the album into two sections of all these trap bangers, progressively, like, preceding each other, and then all these somber songs preceding each other. Whereas in Nothing Great About Britain, the order is a bit more random, I would say. Perhaps not random. I'm sure the way the track list was designed was intentional, but it wasn't as, I'd say, not as cohesive as Tyrant. But, obviously there's bangers like Doorman, Inglorious, like Drug Dealer. These are all songs that are very menacing, very intimidating. He uses a lot, there's a lot less melody in these songs. slowthai's rapping is very aggressive. He's very angry. But then you compare that to songs like Gorgeous, Northampton's Child, and Ladies. Like, these songs are a lot slower, a lot more introspective, and slowthai's rapping is a lot more melodic. He uses a lot of melodies in his songs that are a bit more introspective. And I've also noticed that in these songs that are introspective, the instrumentals generally, a lot of them have to do with some sort of vocal sample, whether that's distorted or not. And it's always quite a haunting vocal sample. It's kind of like walking through like a haunted mansion. It's haunting. It's sad. It's melancholic. And that, like, you can obviously see this in Tyrant, like in I Tried. Um, uh, Push. He's not always using a vocal sample, but he uses melodies in these kind of songs a lot. Um, yeah, and you can even see in the samples in the second half of Tyrant, it's a lot of singers like um, and Dominic Fike and oh, fuck, Blake James. I forgot the name of him. James Blake. Sorry, I forgot the name of him. Yeah. Whereas in the more trap section, there's rap features. It's a bit more focused on creating like a banger, aggressive rapping like ASAP Rocky and Skepta. But anyway, yeah, I'm talking about Nothing Great About Britain, not Tyrant. And yeah, but in Nothing Great About Britain, you can see he uses melodies a bit more in the songs that are a bit more introspective, like Gorgeous, Crack. There's these vocal samples, these singing or these samples of singing, either that or Tyrant, slowthai himself is trying to sing in a more melodic way. Yeah, I wouldn't say this album is, it's not as good as Tyrant for sure. I think Tyrant is one of my favorite albums of all time, but I do enjoy it. So some highlights of the album for me: Doorman obviously is just a banger. This is one of slowthai's best songs. Every time I listen to it, it gets better. It's just so fucking good. The instrumental by Muramasa is incredible. The flow, the delivery by slowthai is perfect. I like the vocal effect they do on his voice. It sounds a bit deeper, and his accent doesn't come through as much, which isn't a bad thing. But he just he sounds a bit more, a bit deeper, a bit more aggressive. And yeah, obviously this song's a banger. It's a great song. It's short. It's sweet. Great add to your gym playlist. Gorgeous is another great song. Whereas Doorman's a bit more of a banger, Gorgeous is a bit more slowed down. It has a really cool sample of a vocal. Kind of reminds me of Kanye. It's just slowthai talking about his upbringing or just kind of his roots, I guess. Following this, we have Crack, which is another really good song where slowthai is comparing a relationship with a lover to an addiction to a drug. And again, like, this relies on these haunting vocal samples as Ty is being a bit more introspective and analytical, and it's a bit more, sadder. Later on, you have the song Inglorious featuring Skepta. I always switch between which song I think is better between Inglorious and Cancelled. These are just such great songs. I hope that every slowthai album has a song with Skepta, because they just make absolute fucking bangers. They're just so good. They play off each other so well. The energy of the song, just the amount of ego they bring to it, just really creates such a energetic atmosphere. Another great gym song like Doorman. Toaster is a really good song, kind of just slowthai talking about who he is, being unapologetic about who he is and just accepting who he is. And again, another introspective song, a bit more of a haunting sample, a bit more, uses a vocal sample. Northampton's Child, I like. It's kind of like, every rapper has a song that they dedicate to their mum. And this is slowthai. He's talking about his mum and how she brought him up. I like this song. Drug Dealer is one of my favorite songs off the album. I just really love the drums for this song. I love how the drums, there's more elements added to the percussion as the song progresses. And also with the other part of the instrumental, I love how that's becoming more and more menacing and kind of builds until, it's drowning out slowthai by the end of the song. I really enjoyed that. Really good song. And Rainbow, where slowthai is talking about, to finish off the album, Rainbow, where slowthai is talking about the important women in his life, and why we should be thankful for them. No, sorry, that's Ladies. Sorry, Ladies is a song where he's talking about all the important women in his life, and why we should be thankful for them. Rainbow is talking about race, and just kind of just his musings on race and discrimination. Polaroid is another menacing song where he's talking about, he's going through his life and kind of using this metaphor of a camera, of capturing these moments. I really like the instrumental for this song, and I like the use of the sound of the Polaroid being put in the song intermittently. It just, I don't know, added a menacing vibe to it. I don't know why, but it just did. And then Tea and Biscuits to end the album is pretty good too. Another song that's a bit more menacing again. Yeah, I would say nothing great about Britain. I would probably give it a low 7, a high 6 to a low 7. It's not as good as no, I'd probably give it a low to mid 7. This is a really good album. There are some really good songs on this album. Okay, maybe a high 6 to a low 7. There are some really good songs on this album, but there's also a lot of songs that I don't really care for. Yeah, I'm also going to apologize here for, I don't really know how to talk about albums still. I'm more observant of film and television, but I'm learning. I'm trying to expand my taste, and that's why I went back to Nothing Great About Britain. I don't really know how to talk about music. I don't know any music theory. I just kind of hear something in it and I like it, but I'm hoping to develop that skill as I progress with this podcast. Anyway, so the last thing I would like to talk about this week is How to Become a Tyrant, which is the new Netflix mini documentary series. I'm not going to talk about this much because there's not really much to say, I guess, because this is enjoyable. If you have any interest in tyrants or dictators, I would say watch this. It's obviously not a really in-depth documentary. Every episode goes for about 30 minutes, and it's framed in this way of this, this playbook of what you need to do to become a tyrant. And each episode focuses on a particular dictator, and then, throughout the episode references other dictators. And I found this enjoyable because I thought I had a decent knowledge of a lot of this stuff, but I was really surprised about a lot of the stuff. Like some of the stuff these dictators did, I was really surprised. Like obviously I knew they fucking sucked, but I was surprised by just like some of the stuff they did. I didn't know about how they operated, and just seeing the rise to power, the maintenance of power, and the loss of power. It's a very interesting cycle. And these people obviously are terrible, but they are very interesting people. I enjoyed it. It kind of made me want to read more about some of these dictators, like Saddam Hussein. The episode on Saddam Hussein was horrifying. Some of the stuff he did. So I would say if you're interested in that stuff, watch it. It's also interesting seeing like the actual footage of them. I don't know what the reception to this show's been, but I found it fairly enjoyable and fairly interesting. And I think, if you've got a couple of hours to spare, it's a decent thing to watch, and just, chill out. Like obviously it's pretty heavy at times, but I found it quite enjoyable. Not much I can really say about it apart from, if you're interested in that thing, I think it's definitely worth checking out. It's very accessible, and I think that's obviously the point. It's trying to make these, break down all the politics and stuff of how these dictators rose to power to something that's very accessible for your lay person. That's all I really have to say this week. Thank you for listening if you did listen. I also made a mistake last week. The email is not killingtheboredom@gmail.com. It's killingtheboredompod@gmail.com. So killingtheboredompod, POD, @gmail.com. So I apologize if you emailed that last week. Please just email it again this week and I will respond. If to the couple of listeners of you out there, thank you for listening. I really do appreciate it. I love talking about this stuff, and I apologize for not making the time for it recently. But I'm going to try really hard to make more time for it, especially with Kanye's album hopefully dropping this week. I'm very, very excited for it, and I would love to talk about it. So yeah, again, thanks for listening. I hope you've all been well, and enjoy your day. Bye.